Welcome to David's Stories. Today we follow Lee Willis, a father betrayed by his son's greed who reclaims his dignity, seeks justice, and redirects his legacy to meaningful causes. Subscribe and hit the bell for weekly tales of truth and resilience. Share your thoughts below. Let's start the story. The air in my Oakland home carried the faint scent of cedar and old paper, a reminder of the life Martha and I had built together over 4 decades. The walls whispered memories, her laughter, the clink of her teacup, the way she'd hum while tending her garden. 3 years had passed since she left this world, but her presence lingered in every corner, guiding me like a compass through the fog of my days. I stood in my study, surrounded by shelves of engineering journals and framed photographs of our family. Simon, my only son Fern, his practical wife, and their children Mia and Ethan, whose smiles could thaw even the coldest heart. Tonight, though, my heart was warm with anticipation. Tomorrow we'd embark on a family vacation to Hawaii, a dream I'd funded with $20,000 from my savings, a gift, to stitch our fractured family back together. I traced my fingers over the travel folder on my desk, labeled Hawaii 2025, in my careful handwriting. Inside were confirmations for the Grand Wailea Resort Ocean View Suites for 7 and a detailed itinerary. Snorkeling in Molokini sunset luau's, a helicopter tour over volcanic cliffs. I'd planned every detail with Simon, Fern, and my sister-in-law Pearl over late-night dinners, their excitement mirroring mine. Or so I thought. The folder felt heavier than it should, as if it held secrets beyond plane tickets and brochures. A faint unease stirred in my gut like the static before a storm, but I dismissed it. After all, I was Lee Willis, a man who'd solved complex engineering problems for 43 years. I trusted logic, not premonitions. The phone buzzed on my desk, shattering the quiet. Simon's name flashed on the screen. I answered, expecting last-minute travel details. "Dad?" His voice crackled, strained, like he was speaking through a mask. "Just checking you're packed. Flight's at 4:15 tomorrow. Don't be late." His words were clipped, devoid of the warmth we'd shared during our planning sessions. I frowned, chalking it up to stress. Coordinating a family of 7 wasn't easy, especially with his demanding tech job. "All set," I replied, glancing at my suitcase by the door, neatly packed with Aloha shirts and sunscreen. "See you at SFO." As I hung up, a shadow flickered in the corner of my vision just beyond the lamplight. I turned, but nothing was there, only Martha's old oak chair empty by the window. My pulse quickened, an old instinct from years I'd buried long ago, years when I'd worked on classified projects with stakes higher than bridges or circuits. I shook my head, laughing at myself. Just nerves, I thought. Tomorrow would be perfect. Morning broke over the Oakland hills, painting my bedroom in shades of amber. I dressed methodically, khakis, a crisp linen shirt, and the watch Martha gave me for our 20th anniversary, its ticking a steady reminder of time's weight. The taxi to San Francisco International Airport arrived promptly at noon. Its driver, a grizzled man with eyes that seemed to see more than he let on. "Big trip?" he asked, loading my suitcase into the trunk. "Hawaii," I said, forcing a smile. "Family vacation." He nodded, his gaze lingering in the rearview mirror. "Family's a tricky thing. Hold tight to what matters." His words hung in the air, cryptic, as we sped across the Bay Bridge. San Francisco's skyline glittered under a cloudless sky, but that unease from last night crept back, a whisper I couldn't shake. At SFO's Terminal 2, the air buzzed with the chaos of travelers, children clutching stuffed animals, couples arguing over boarding passes, the hum of rolling luggage like a distant drumbeat. I spotted Simon near the Hawaiian Airlines check-in counter, his tall frame hunched over his phone. Fern stood beside him, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd, while Mia and Ethan chased each other around a suitcase, their laughter a fleeting balm. Pearl and her husband Saul were there too, Pearl's oversized sun hat a beacon in the crowd. Dad Simon called, waving me over, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Something was off. His hands fidgeted, and Fern's posture was rigid, like she was bracing for impact. I pushed through the crowd, my suitcase catching on someone's heel, and joined them. "Everything set?" I asked, trying to ignore the tightening in my chest. Simon's gaze darted to the departure board, then back to me. "Dad, I've got bad news." His voice sliced through the terminal's noise, sharp and cold. "I forgot to buy your ticket." The words hit like a physical blow. My vision blurred at the edges, the chatter of tourists and the clatter of luggage fading into a dull roar. Forgot? My voice was smaller than I intended, barely audible over the chaos. "Simon, we've been planning this for 3 months. I gave you $20,000, $6,000 for the whole family." He wouldn't meet my eyes, his focus fixed on the flickering departure board. I know. Work's been crazy and I just missed it." His hands were deep in his pockets, a tell I'd known since he was a boy hiding broken toys. He was lying. "You missed it." I repeated the number, heavy on my tongue. $20,000, Simon. For all of us. Around us, families hurried past, clutching boarding passes, their excitement a cruel mockery of my growing dread. A woman in a lei laughed, her voice grating against my nerves. Fern stepped forward, her smile practiced but brittle. "We're so grateful, Dad Willis. Really. But the flight's boarding soon and—" She trailed off, glancing at Simon, who checked his watch with a theatrical sigh. I dragged my suitcase toward the check-in counter, the wheels stuttering on the polished floor. This was fixable. It had to be. "Excuse me," I called to the agent, a young woman in a crisp blue uniform, her name tag reading Kiana. "I need to check flights to Honolulu today. There's been a mix-up with my booking." Kiana's fingers danced over her keyboard, her professional smile faltering as she scanned the screen. "Name on the reservation, sir, Lee Willis," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. But there might be an issue. More typing, then a pause that stretched too long. "I'm not seeing a Lee Willis on any bookings with Hawaiian Airlines. Are you sure it was with us?" My chest tightened, a vice squeezing my ribs. "It has to be there." "My family." I turned, searching for Simon, but he drifted toward the security checkpoint, pacing like a caged animal. "My son Simon Willis made the reservation. Party of 7. Kiana's eyes flicked to her screen, then back to me, her expression softening with pity. "I see a booking for Simon Willis, party of 4. Departing at 4:15 today. 2 adults, 2 children. No Lee Willis." The terminal tilted, the fluorescent lights blurring into streaks. 4, I whispered. "Check again, please." "I've checked twice, sir," Kiana said gently. "Would you like me to look for standby options?" Hope flickered, fragile as a candle in a gale. "Yes, anything." She shook her head, her fingers stilling on the keyboard. "I'm sorry we're fully booked today. There's a convention in Honolulu. Tomorrow's flights are the same, first class might be available. But it's $500. Simon appeared at my elbow, his hand closing around my arm like a trap. "Dad, we need to talk." His voice was low, urgent, but there was something else, a sharpness I'd never heard before, like a blade hidden in silk. I shook him off, my hands trembling as I steadied my suitcase. "Not now. We're fixing this." I turned back to Kiana. "What about other airlines?" "United Alaska." Simon's grip tightened, pulling me away from the counter. "This isn't going to work, Dad." The words landed like a guillotine. Around us, passengers stared, their curiosity prickling my skin. A child pointed at my tipped-over suitcase, whispering to her mother. Kiana's eyes widened with concern, but she said nothing. "What do you mean, not going to work?" I steadied my luggage, my voice shaking. "I paid for everything, the hotel, the car, the kids' activities. There has to be a way." Simon's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to the departure board. The 4:15 flight to Honolulu flashed final boarding call in red letters. "The vacation's happening now, Dad. My family's through security. You need to go home. Go home." My voice cracked, the terminal's air conditioning chilling my skin. "Simon, you're scaring me." "What's going on?" He checked his watch again, more aggressively this time. What's going on is, we'll manage without you. We'll call from the hotel. His words were flat, final, but his eyes betrayed him. Not guilt, not panic, but relief. A cold, calculated relief that chilled me deeper than the air conditioning ever could. I stood frozen as Simon turned and walked toward the security checkpoint, his silhouette swallowed by the crowd. Mia's laughter echoed faintly then faded as they disappeared beyond the barrier. My suitcase stood alone beside me, a silent witness to my abandonment. The terminal spun a kaleidoscope of strangers' faces and fleeting dreams. I approached Kiana again, my voice steadier than I felt. "Can you check something for me?" "The reservation under Simon Willis, when was it made?" She hesitated, glancing toward the security checkpoint where Simon had vanished. "I'm not supposed to share booking details, sir, but—" Her fingers moved across the keyboard, her eyes narrowing. "It was booked 6 weeks ago. Party of 4. No changes?" "Since." 6 weeks. Not 3 months when we'd sat around Fern's dining table poring over brochures. Not last week when Simon swore he was finalizing details. 6 weeks ago when he'd already decided to erase me from the plan. My legs felt weak, the counter's cool metal grounding me as I gripped its edge. "Other airlines," I asked, my voice hollow. "Anything to Honolulu this week?" Kiana's expression grew more sympathetic with each search. "United has a waitlist of 47 people. Alaska's booked through Tuesday. There's a Southwest red-eye tonight with 2 stops arriving Thursday afternoon. It's $1,800. I reached for my wallet, then stopped. Simon's face flashed in my mind. His relief, his calculated dismissal. He'd known all along. He'd taken my money, my trust, and left me stranded. The gate for the 4:15 flight was visible in the distance, the last stragglers rushing through. An announcement crackled overhead. "Hawaiian Airlines Flight 407 to Honolulu is now closed for boarding." My phone buzzed. A text from Simon. "Sorry, Dad. We'll call from hotel. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself." The words burned a casual dismissal after stealing my $20,000 and 3 months of my hope. I slid the phone into my pocket, my fingers brushing against the watch Martha gave me. Its ticking was a lifeline pulling me back from the edge of despair. Kiana cleared her throat. "Sir, about that Southwest flight, should I hold it?" "No," I said, the word sharp and final. "I'm sure," her eyes softened, but I turned away embarrassed by her pity. The departure board updated Flight 447. Departed. Simon and his family were airborne, sipping complimentary drinks, toasting a vacation they thought they'd earned. But something shifted inside me, a spark igniting in the ashes of betrayal. This wasn't about a forgotten ticket or poor planning. This was about who they thought I was: a fool, a doormat, an old man to be discarded. I picked up my suitcase and walked toward the exit. The automatic doors slid open, and the afternoon air hit me like a revelation. Each step away from the gate was a step toward clarity. They'd made a calculation about Lee Willis, assuming I'd slink home, complain, and accept my place as the family's forgotten benefactor. They were wrong. The taxi line stretched long, but I welcomed the wait. It gave me time to think, to let the pieces settle like fragments of a shattered blueprint. The driver, the same grizzled man from earlier, raised an eyebrow as I climbed in. "Back so soon, Oakland," I said, settling into the back seat. "Montclair District." He didn't ask questions, but his eyes met mine in the rear-view mirror, sharp with understanding. "Rough day." "Getting rougher," I replied, staring at Simon's text glowing on my phone. The Bay Bridge loomed ahead, its cables slicing the sky like the strings of a harp I could no longer play. I thought of Martha, her strength, her refusal to let anyone diminish her. "Sometimes kindness is mistaken for weakness," she'd said. "Don't let them confuse the two, Lee." I wasn't the man I'd been when I locked my front door this morning, brimming with excitement for a family reunion. I was something else now, something harder, sharper, forged in the crucible of betrayal. As we drove through Daly City, I replayed the past months, Simon's enthusiasm when I proposed the trip. Fern's calculated smiles, Pearl's chatter about luau's. All lies woven with precision to exclude me. You know the worst part, I said more to myself than the driver. What's that? He asked, his voice gravelly but kind. They thought I'd just take it, roll over and play dead. He chuckled, a sound that carried the weight of his own battles. You gonna prove 'em wrong. The Bay Bridge stretched before us, a path between the man I was and the man I needed to become. I'm 68 years old, I said. I built bridges, designed circuits, survived corporate wars. I raised a son who thinks I'm a fool. But I didn't live this long by letting people walk over me. Now you're talking sense, the driver said, his grin a flicker of camaraderie. My phone buzzed again. Fern this time. So sorry about the mix-up. Dad Willis, we'll bring you something nice from Hawaii. Mix-up. The word was a lie wrapped in silk, as deliberate as Simon's relief at the airport. I stared out at the Bay Area's familiar sprawl houses glowing with the warmth of families who didn't calculate betrayal over dinner. The spark inside me grew, fueled by a truth I'd ignored too long. This wasn't just about a vacation. It was about a family that had decided I was expendable. As the taxi wound through Oakland's hills, I felt a shift, like the gears of a machine locking into place. The folder in my suitcase held more than travel plans. It held evidence, a trail of deceit I'd unravel. Martha's voice echoed in my mind, steady and sure. Don't let them confuse kindness with weakness. I wouldn't. Not anymore. The taxi pulled into my driveway as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting my house in shadow. I handed the driver $60. Keep the change, I said. And thanks for the conversation. Whatever you're planning, he said, his eyes glinting with something like prophecy, make sure they feel it. I stepped out, my suitcase heavier with purpose. The key turned in the lock with a familiar click. But the house felt different, charged like the air before a lightning strike. I wasn't defeated. I was awake. And Simon was about to learn that the man he'd discarded still had secrets of his own. The taxi's engine hummed as we wound through the familiar streets of Daly City, the Bay Bridge fading into the distance behind us. The driver's cryptic words, "Hold tight to what matters," lingered in my mind, intertwining with the sting of Simon's betrayal. My phone sat heavy in my pocket, Simon's text glowing like a taunt. Sorry, Dad. We'll call from hotel. Take care of yourself. Each word was a calculated cut designed to dismiss me as easily as one discards an old blueprint. I stared out the window, the Bay Area's sprawl blurring into a tapestry of lights and shadows. The world felt different now, as if the colors had shifted, revealing edges I'd never noticed before. I was no stranger to calculations. 43 years as an engineer had taught me to see patterns where others saw chaos, stress points in bridges, fault lines in circuits, weaknesses in systems. But this was a fault line in my family, one I'd ignored for too long. Simon's relief at the airport. Fern's brittle smile. The absence of my name on a reservation I'd funded with $20,000, it wasn't a mistake. It was a design, a deliberate exclusion planned with the precision I'd once admired in my son. The realization settled like lead in my chest, heavy but clarifying. You okay back there? The driver asked, his voice pulling me from my thoughts. His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, sharp and knowing, as if he could see the storm brewing inside me. Ever have someone betray you so completely you didn't see it coming? I asked, surprising myself with the question. He chuckled, a low, gravelly sound. Brother, I've seen betrayals that'd make your story look like a picnic. Family's the worst, they know exactly where to twist the knife. His words carried a weight, like he'd lived a life of secrets I'd never unravel. For a moment I wondered if he was more than just a driver, but I pushed the thought aside. My imagination was running wild, fueled by exhaustion and hurt. They thought I'd just go home, I said, my voice hardening. Like I'm some old man they can push aside. The driver's grin widened, his teeth catching the streetlights. Sounds like they don't know who they're dealing with. You gonna let 'em get away with it? I didn't answer, but the spark that had ignited at the airport flared brighter. Martha's voice echoed in my mind, steady as ever. Don't let them confuse kindness with weakness, Lee. For years I'd been the generous father, the reliable grandfather, the man who paid for Simon's mistakes, college tuition, mortgage payments, medical bills. I'd built a life of giving, but they'd mistaken it for softness. That ended today. The taxi pulled into my driveway as dusk settled over the Oakland hills, my house looming like a sentinel in the fading light. The cedar and paper scent greeted me as I stepped inside, but it felt different now, charged like the air before a thunderstorm. My suitcase thudded against the hardwood floor, the sound echoing through the empty house. Martha's grandmother clock ticked in the living room, its rhythm a reminder that time was still moving even if my world had stopped. I didn't unpack. Instead, I carried the suitcase to my study, the room where I'd solved problems that kept cities standing. The Hawaii 2025 folder sat on my desk, its neat label mocking me. I opened it, spreading the contents across the leather surface like evidence in a trial. Invoices, confirmations, brochures, each document a piece of the puzzle Simon had so carefully constructed. My fingers trembled as I found the hotel reservation, Grand Wailea Resort Ocean View. Suites 7 guests, 10 nights. The names were listed in black ink: Simon Willis, Fern Willis, Mia Willis, Ethan Willis, Pearl Thompson, Saul Thompson, and Martha Willis. My breath caught. Martha, my wife, dead 3 years, her name printed, where mine should have been. The room seemed to tilt, the lamplight casting jagged shadows across the desk. It wasn't a clerical error. It was a deliberate erasure, a final twist of the knife. They'd used her name to fill the slot my money had paid for, ensuring I was excluded from the start. The audacity of it burned through me, hotter than anger, sharper than pain. It was a message: you don't belong. I sat in Martha's oak chair, the one she'd loved, by the window, and stared at the framed photo of last Christmas. Simon, Fern, the kids, Pearl, and Saul, all smiling around my dining table, their plates filled with the catered meal I'd paid for. I'd been the generous fool, the patriarch they'd taken for granted. But as I traced the edges of the photo, a memory surfaced, not of family dinners, but of a night long ago during my classified work for a tech firm in the 80s. A colleague had betrayed our team, leaking schematics to a rival. I'd uncovered the truth by following the trail of documents, piecing together a pattern no one else saw. That instinct, dormant for decades, stirred now. Simon's betrayal was just another puzzle, and I was still the man who solved them. I reached for the landline, an old habit from Martha's insistence on keeping it for real connections. My cell phone felt too exposed, too tied to Simon's world of texts and lies. The weight of the receiver grounded me as I dialed the Grand Wailea Resort. The line crackled and a woman's voice answered, warm but practiced. "Reservations, this is Co. How may I help you? I need to check a reservation under Willis." I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "Of course, Mr. Willis. Let me pull that up." The sound of typing filled the pause. "Yes, I see a reservation for 7 guests checking in tomorrow. Ocean View Suites. 10 nights. Is there something specific you need?" My grip tightened on the receiver. "When was it made?" A hesitation, then more typing. "The booking was finalized 6 weeks ago, sir. No changes since." 6 weeks? The same timeline Kiana had confirmed at the airport. My heart pounded, but I kept my tone even. "And the names on the reservation, can you read them to me?" Co paused, her voice cautious. "I'm not supposed to share that information, but since you're the primary contact—" Simon Willis, Fern Willis, Mia Willis, Ethan Willis, Pearl Thompson, Saul Thompson, and Martha Willis. The name hit like a fist. "Martha Willis," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "My wife. She passed away 3 years ago." A sharp intake of breath on the other end. "I'm so sorry, sir. That's unusual. Would you like me to update the reservation?" No, I said the word sharp and final. I want to cancel it. All of it. Another pause longer this time. Are you sure Mr. Willis canceling this close to arrival incurs a $300 or $200 penalty? The resort is beautiful this time of year. Perhaps I can offer alternatives. No alternatives, I said, my voice like steel. Cancel it now. The typing resumed slow and deliberate, as if Co sensed the weight of my decision. The cancellation is processed. You'll receive confirmation via email within the hour. May I ask, what should I tell anyone who arrives expecting this reservation? Tell them it was canceled by Lee Willis at 6:47 p.m. Pacific Time on May 15th, I said. Make sure they know it was deliberate. Of course, Sir Co replied, her tone softer now, almost reverent. Is there anything else I can help you with? No. You've been very helpful, Co. Thank you. I hung up, the click of the receiver echoing in the silent study. The shadows on the walls seemed to shift, as if approving of my resolve. I leaned back in Martha's chair, the folder's contents spread before me like a map to a new path. Canceling the reservation wasn't revenge. It was a signal of flare sent into the night to let Simon know I wasn't the man he thought I was. The clock ticked past 7:00 p.m., its rhythm a counterpoint to my racing thoughts. I stood and crossed to the filing cabinet, Martha's meticulous organization a testament to her strength. Inside I found the folder labeled Family Support, a chronicle of my generosity bank statements showing transfers to Simon's mortgage company, receipts for Mia's violin lessons, Ethan's soccer gear, Pearl's hip replacement. Last year alone, $47,000. Each document was a brick in the wall of trust they'd dismantled. As I sifted through the papers, a faint hum filled the room like the buzz of a distant machine. I froze, my hand hovering over a receipt. The sound wasn't coming from the house. It was inside my head, a sensation I hadn't felt since my classified projects when I'd worked on experimental tech that pushed the boundaries of physics. I shook it off, chalking it up to stress. But the unease lingered, a reminder of the secrets I'd buried long ago. I returned to the desk and opened my laptop, the screen's glow casting my face in stark relief. A search for Simon's name revealed nothing new, just his LinkedIn profile, boasting of his tech career, and a few photos from family events I'd funded. But then I noticed something odd, a cryptic post on his social media dated 6 weeks ago, the same time as the reservation. Big plans in motion. Sometimes you have to cut dead weight to move forward. The words hit like a second betrayal, their meaning unmistakable. I was the dead weight. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, tempted to confront him now, but I stopped. Simon thought he'd won that. I'd slink back to my quiet life, nursing my wounds. He didn't know the man I'd been before fatherhood, before engineering, before I'd buried the part of me that thrived on solving the unsolvable. That man was waking up. I pulled out a legal pad, Martha's favorite, and began writing. Not a letter to Simon, but a plan. Bullet points precise as a schematic. Verify all financial transactions with Simon. Contact Bruce Harland, lawyer. Secure assets against further exploitation. Uncover the full extent of their plan. The hum in my head returned louder this time, accompanied by a flicker of light in the corner of the room. I turned, half expecting to see Martha's silhouette, but it was just the lamp, its bulb pulsing faintly. A trick of the wiring, I told myself, but my pulse quickened. During my classified work, I'd encountered phenomena that defied explanation, signals that shouldn't exist, patterns that hinted at forces beyond our understanding. I'd dismissed them as stress then, too. Now I wasn't so sure. I stood and crossed to the window, peering into the darkened garden. Martha's roses glowed faintly under the moonlight, their petals swaying as if whispering secrets. I'd always thought of this house as a sanctuary, but tonight it felt alive, watching me, urging me forward. I returned to the desk and dialed a number I hadn't called in months. Bruce Harland, my lawyer, a man who'd handled Martha's estate with the precision of a surgeon. The line rang twice before his voicemail picked up, his voice calm and professional. "This is Bruce Harland. Leave a message, and I'll return your call." I hesitated, then spoke. "Bruce, it's Lee Willis. I need an urgent consultation. Family matter. Call me back." I hung up, the weight of the decision settling over me like armor. The clock struck 8:00 p.m., its chimes reverberating through the house. I poured a glass of bourbon, a rare indulgence, and sat in Martha's chair, the folder open before me. The hotel brochure stared back its images of turquoise waves and smiling families, a cruel irony. Simon had planned this betrayal 6 weeks ago, maybe longer. Fern's calculated smiles, Pearl's chatter. They'd all been part of it, conditioning me to expect exclusion. But why money was the obvious answer, but something deeper gnawed at me, a shadow I couldn't yet name. I sipped the bourbon, its burn grounding me. The hum in my head faded, replaced by a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Simon thought he'd outmaneuvered me, but he'd forgotten who I was. I'd built systems that powered cities, solved problems that stumped governments. I'd survived betrayals before, not from family, but from men who thought intellect was weakness. They'd learned otherwise. So would Simon. The phone rang, startling me. Bruce's number flashed on the screen. I answered, my voice steady. "Bruce, thanks for calling back. Lee," he said, his tone warm but cautious. "What's the urgent matter, my son?" I said, the words heavy with truth. "He's shown me who he really is. I need to protect what's mine." A pause, then Bruce's voice sharpened. "Tell me everything." I recounted the airport, the missing ticket, the reservation for 4, the name Martha in place of mine. I told him about the $20,000, the 6-week-old, booking, the relief in Simon's eyes. Bruce listened, his silence the kind that weighs evidence. "This sounds deliberate," he said finally. "We can meet tomorrow to discuss options. Bring any documentation you have." "I will," I said, my eyes on the folder. "This isn't about revenge, Bruce. It's about justice." "Understood," he replied. "Get some rest, Lee. You're going to need it." I hung up, the bourbon glass empty in my hand. The lamp flickered again, casting a shadow that seemed to move independently of the light. I stood, my heart pounding, and crossed to the window. The garden was still, but the roses seemed to glow brighter, their petals almost translucent. For a moment I swore I saw Martha's silhouette among them, her eyes fierce with approval. I blinked, and she was gone. I returned to the desk, my legal pad now a blueprint for action. Simon had drawn first blood, but I was no longer the man who'd walked into that airport with a suitcase full of hope. I was Lee Willis, engineer, widower, survivor. And I was just getting started. The bourbon burned my throat as I sat in Martha's chair, the Hawaii 2025 folder splayed across the desk like a battlefield map. The discovery of Martha's name on the hotel reservation, where mine should have been, had cracked something open inside me, not just anger, but a clarity as sharp as the blueprints I'd once drafted. My son Simon had orchestrated a betrayal so precise it could have been engineered, and I'd been blind to it. But no longer. The house was silent, save for the steady tick of Martha's grandmother clock each second, a pulse urging me forward. The flickering lamp and the faint hum in my head from earlier lingered like echoes of a past I'd buried, a past where I'd navigated betrayals with stakes far higher than a family vacation. I stood, the bourbon glass cold in my hand, and crossed to the window. Martha's roses glowed under the moonlight, their petals almost luminescent, swaying in a breeze I couldn't feel. For a moment I thought I saw her silhouette again, standing among them, her eyes fierce with the strength she'd always carried. "Don't let them confuse kindness with weakness, Lee." The words weren't just a memory, now they were a command. I blinked, and the garden was empty, but the resolve in my chest burned brighter. Returning to the desk, I opened the folder again, my engineer's mind dissecting each document. The hotel confirmation was the most damning: Grand Wailea Resort, Ocean View Suites. 7 guests, 10 nights. Simon, Fern, Mia, Ethan, Pearl, Saul, and Martha. My wife dead 3 years, her name a cruel placeholder for the slot my $20,000 had paid for. The invoice showed the transfer to Simon's account 6 weeks ago, the same time he'd posted that cryptic message online. Big plans in motion. Sometimes you have to cut dead weight to move forward. Dead weight. Me. The hum in my head returned sharper this time, like a signal breaking through static. It was a sensation I hadn't felt since the '80s, working on classified projects for a tech firm that operated in shadows, projects involving frequencies and energies that didn't belong in textbooks. Back then, I'd dismissed such sensations as stress, but tonight they felt like a warning or a guide. I shook it off, focusing on the task at hand. Simon thought he'd outmaneuvered me, but he'd forgotten the man who'd taught him to think strategically, the man who'd built systems that powered cities. I reached for the landline again, its weight grounding me in a world that felt increasingly unsteady. The Grand Wailea's number was still in my call history from last night's cancellation, but I needed confirmation. A final nail in the coffin of Simon's deceit. The line crackled and Ko's voice answered, her Hawaiian warmth tinged with curiosity. Reservations, this is Ko. How may I assist you? Ko, it's Lee Willis, I said, my voice steady. I need to confirm the cancellation from yesterday. The Willis reservation. A pause, then the sound of typing. Yes, Mr. Willis, I see it. Cancelled at 6:47 p.m. Pacific Time on May 15th. Full penalty of $3,200 applied. No reinstatement possible due to the convention season. Good, I said, a grim satisfaction settling over me. And if someone arrives today expecting that reservation, I'll inform them it was cancelled by Lee Willis. As instructed, she replied, her tone cautious. Is there anything else you need, sir? No, Ko. You've done enough. I hung up, the click of the receiver like a gavel striking. The cancellation wasn't just a retaliation, it was a message, a declaration that I was no longer the passive patriarch they'd taken for granted. Simon would land in Hawaii today expecting a luxurious welcome, only to find his plans in ruins. The thought brought no joy, only a cold resolve. The lamp flickered again, casting jagged shadows across the study. I glanced at it, half expecting to see someone watching me. The hum in my head pulsed, syncing with the clock's ticking, and for a moment I swore the air grew heavier, like the room itself was holding its breath. I stood crossing to the filing cabinet where Martha's meticulous organization preserved our history. The family support folder was thicker than I remembered. A ledger of my generosity, $47,000 last year alone, covering Simon's mortgage. Mia's violin lessons, Ethan's soccer gear, Pearl's surgery. Each receipt was a brick in the wall of trust they'd demolished. As I flipped through the documents, a photograph slipped out, landing face up on the desk. It was Martha and me 20 years ago, standing on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. Her smile was radiant, her hand in mine, the wind tugging at her scarf. But what caught my eye was the background, a faint, unnatural shimmer in the sky, like a distortion I'd seen during those classified projects. I'd dismissed it as a camera glitch back then, but now it felt like a clue, a thread connecting my past to this moment. I tucked the photo into my pocket, my fingers brushing against the watch she'd given me. Its ticking was a lifeline anchoring me to her strength. I needed more than instinct now, I needed a plan. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank records, tracing the $20,000 transfer to Simon's account. The transaction was clean, but a second transfer caught my eye, $5,000 to an unfamiliar account, dated the same day as the hotel booking. The recipient was listed as Pacific Ventures, a name that stirred a vague memory from my old tech days. A shell company, a side deal. The hum in my head grew louder, urging me to dig deeper, but I didn't have the tools for that yet. Instead, I jotted it down on my legal pad next to my plan, Investigate Pacific Ventures. The phone rang, shattering the silence. Bruce Harlan's number flashed on the screen. I answered, my pulse quickening. Bruce, thanks for getting back to me. Lee, he said, his voice calm but alert. I got your message. Sounds serious. What's going on? I recounted everything, the airport, Martha's name on the reservation, the $20,000 Simon's relief. I told him about the cancellation, the cryptic social media post, and the mysterious $5,000 transfer. Bruce listened, his silence methodical like a chess player studying the board. "This is more than a family spat," he said finally. "It's financial exploitation, possibly coordinated. We need to meet. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Bring all the documents." "Tomorrow works," I said, glancing at the folder. "This isn't about revenge, Bruce. It's about protecting what's mine." "Understood," he replied. "And Lee, be careful. If Simon's gone this far, he might not stop at a missed plane ticket." The warning hung in the air as I hung up. The lamp flickered again, and the hum in my head pulsed sharper now, like a signal from a forgotten project. I crossed to the window, the roses glowing brighter, their petals almost translucent. For a moment I swore I saw Martha's silhouette again, her hand raised as if pointing me toward something. I blinked, and the garden was still, but the air felt charged like the moment before a circuit completes. I spent the rest of the night preparing, gathering documents and notes, my engineer's mind mapping the betrayal like a schematic. By dawn, the study was a war room, papers organized with precision, each one a piece of evidence. The $5,000 transfer nagged at me, a loose thread in an otherwise clear pattern. Pacific Ventures wasn't just a name, it was a shadow, a hint of something larger. During my classified work, I'd encountered shell companies used to funnel money for projects that never saw daylight. Was Simon involved in something deeper than greed? The thought was absurd, yet it lingered, fueled by the hum that refused to fade. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across the study. I showered and dressed in a crisp shirt and slacks, the watch on my wrist ticking steadily. The drive to San Francisco was a blur, the Bay Bridge stretching before me like a path to justice. Bruce's office occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower, its polished marble and mahogany exuding authority. I stepped into the elevator, the folder under my arm, feeling the weight of my decision. This wasn't just about a vacation, it was about reclaiming my dignity, my legacy, myself. Bruce greeted me with a firm handshake, his eyes sharp with understanding. At 55, he carried the confidence of a man who'd untangled countless family messes. "Lee, come in," he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his desk. "Let's see what you've got." I spread the documents before him, bank statements, the hotel confirmation screenshots of Simon's post, my notes about Pacific Ventures. I recounted the airport betrayal, the cancellation, and the hum in my head, though I left out the roses and Martha's silhouette. Some things were too personal, too strange to share. Bruce listened, his pen moving across a legal pad. His questions precise. How long has Simon been financially dependent? Any threats? What's this Pacific Ventures transfer? 20 years minimum, I said, sliding the family support folder across the desk. No overt threats yet, just that post about dead weight. The transfer, I don't know. It's familiar, but I can't place it. Bruce studied the documents, his expression growing serious. "This is deliberate exploitation, Lee. The hotel reservation alone is grounds for legal action. The Pacific Ventures transfer raises red flags, could be a side deal or worse. I'll have my team look into it. For now, let's focus on protecting your assets." "Protecting them how?" I asked, leaning forward. He opened his laptop, pulling up estate planning templates. "We can revise your will to exclude Simon entirely. California law supports your right to distribute your estate as you see fit, especially with evidence of financial coercion. We can designate charitable beneficiaries, lock it down with witnesses and notarization, and record a competency video to prevent challenges." The relief was physical, like a weight lifting from my shoulders. "I want him out," I said. "Everything goes to organizations that'll use it for good. No more funding, Simon's greed." Bruce nodded, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "We'll draft a new will naming the Oakland Children's Education Foundation and UC Berkeley's Engineering Scholarship Fund as primary beneficiaries. I'll include specific language about Simon's exclusion, citing exploitation. With this documentation, it's ironclad. How long, I asked, my voice steady. Documents ready by next week. We'll need 2 witnesses, a notary, and the video. You're sure about this? I thought of Mia and Ethan, their innocent smiles, but also Simon's relief at the airport, his calculated erasure of my place in the family. They changed the rules first, I said. I'm just making it official. Bruce leaned back, studying me. This is permanent, Lee. It'll change your family forever. They already did, I replied, the hum in my head pulsing faintly like a signal approving my choice. We spent the next hour outlining details. The Oakland Children's Education Foundation would receive $400,000 for scholarships. UC Berkeley's engineering program would get $300,000 for students like I'd been hungry for knowledge, not handouts. Senior Services Veterans Program's community development causes that valued stewardship over entitlement. Bruce's pen moved steadily, his notes a blueprint for justice. As I left his office, the elevator descended 15 floors, the city skyline shimmering beyond the glass. The hum in my head was quieter now, but the roses in my garden loomed in my mind, their glow a beacon. I drove home the Bay Bridge, a path between the man I'd been and the man I was becoming. Martha's strength was with me, her voice a guide through the fog of betrayal. Back in my study, I opened the folder again, my eyes lingering on the Pacific Ventures transfer. I typed the name into my laptop, but the results were vague: a defunct website, a few mentions in obscure financial forums. Yet the hum returned sharper and the lamp flickered, casting a shadow that seemed to pulse with intent. I stood crossing to the window, and there it was again. Martha's silhouette among the roses, her hand raised pointing toward the filing cabinet. I opened it, my fingers finding a sealed envelope I didn't remember. It was unmarked, the paper yellowed with age. Inside was a single sheet, a memo from my classified project days stamped confidential. It listed Pacific Ventures as a funding entity for a project I'd worked on, a project involving experimental frequencies that had caused anomalies. The hum in my head surged, and the room seemed to hum with it, the air vibrating with possibility. I tucked the memo into my pocket, my heart pounding. Simon's betrayal was more than greed. It was connected to something larger, something I'd buried decades ago. But that was a mystery for another day. For now I had a war to wage, and justice was my weapon. Morning light spilled through the curtains of my Oakland home, bathing the study in a golden glow that felt at odds with the storm inside me. Martha's grandmother clock ticked steadily, its rhythm, a counterpoint to the hum in my head, a hum that had grown louder since last night, pulsing like a signal from a forgotten experiment. The Hawaii 2025 folder lay open on my desk, its contents a map of Simon's betrayal, the hotel reservation with Martha's name in place of mine, the $20,000 transfer, the cryptic $5,000 payment to Pacific Ventures. That last detail gnawed at me, a shadow from my classified past that refused to stay buried. I'd found a memo linking Pacific Ventures to a project I'd worked on decades ago, one involving frequencies that bent reality in ways I'd never fully understood. Was Simon's betrayal tied to something larger? The thought was absurd, yet the hum urged me to keep digging. I sipped my coffee, the Brazilian blend Martha and I had loved for 43 years, its aroma grounding me in the present. The house felt alive today, its walls whispering secrets, as if Martha herself were guiding me. Last night's cancellation of the Grand Wailea reservation was my first strike, a $200 penalty to send Simon a message. I wasn't the fool he thought, but it was only the beginning. Bruce Harland. My lawyer had promised a plan to protect my legacy, and today we'd build the foundation. The hum in my head pulsed in approval, syncing with the clock's ticking, and for a moment the roses outside the window seemed to glow brighter, their petals catching the morning light like tiny beacons. My phone buzzed on the desk, its screen lighting up with a Hawaii number I didn't recognize. My pulse quickened. Simon and his family would have landed yesterday, expecting a luxurious welcome at the Grand Wailea, only to find their reservation gone. I let the call go to voicemail, savoring the moment. The notification appeared seconds later and I played the message, Simon's voice crackling through the speaker laced with panic. "Dad? What the hell is going on? The hotel says you canceled our reservation. We're stuck in the lobby with nowhere to go. The kids are crying. Call me back now." The desperation in his tone was almost satisfying, but it didn't erase the sting of his betrayal at the airport, his relief when he told me to go home. I scrolled through the call log, 12 missed calls since last night, starting at 11:47 p.m., Hawaii time, then every 15 minutes through the night. 11:52, 12, 03, 4:30 a.m., 5:15. Text messages followed each one. More frantic, "Dad. This isn't funny. Call now. The kids are exhausted. Fix this. You're ruining their vacation." Not a single apology, just demands, as if I owed him absolution for his deceit. I set the phone down and opened my legal pad where I'd written my plan. Verify transactions, contact Bruce. Secure assets, investigate Pacific Ventures. The hum in my head sharpened, and the lamp flickered, casting a shadow that seemed to dance across the wall. I glanced at the garden, half expecting to see Martha's silhouette again, but the roses stood alone, their glow steady. The memo from my classified days sat on the desk, its confidential stamp, a reminder of a life I'd left behind, a life where I'd faced betrayals by men who thought they could outsmart me. Simon was no different, just closer to my heart. The phone buzzed again, another Hawaii number. I ignored it, pouring another coffee and settling into Martha's chair. The voicemail notification appeared and I played it, expecting Simon's voice. Instead, it was Fern, her tone clipped but trembling. "Dad Willis, this is a disaster. The kids are heartbroken. We know you're upset about the ticket, but this is too far. Please call us back." Upset about the ticket. She framed it as a misunderstanding, not a calculated exclusion. The lie was almost elegant, but it couldn't hide the truth. They'd taken my money, my trust, and left me stranded. I stood crossing to the filing cabinet where Martha's meticulous records told the story of my generosity, $47,000 last year alone, funding Simon's mortgage, the kids' activities, Pearl's surgery. Each receipt was a wound but also a weapon. I added them to the folder for Bruce along with the Pacific Ventures memo. The hum in my head pulsed louder, and the lamp flickered again, its light dimming for a split second. I froze my hand on the memo. The air felt heavy like it had last night, as if the house itself were watching, urging me forward. I shook my head, dismissing it as nerves, but the sensation lingered, a whisper of something beyond logic. The phone rang again, Simon's name flashing this time. I stared at it, my finger hovering over the green button. 56 missed calls, now each one a testament to his panic. I pressed answer, my voice calm but cold. "Hello, Simon." "Dad, finally." His shout was so loud I held the phone away from my ear. In the background I heard Fern muttering about a complete disaster, and Mia's soft sobs. "What the hell are you doing? The hotel says you canceled everything." "We spent the night in the lobby. The kids are a mess. Fix this now." I reached for my legal pad, noting the time. 8:03 a.m. Pacific. 5:03 a.m. Hawaii. "Fix what?" "Simon," I asked, my tone even. "The vacation I paid for, the one you planned without me." A pause, the background noise quieting. "Dad, that's not what this is about," he said, his voice strained. "It was a mistake, okay? A mix-up with the tickets, but this canceling the hotel, that's cruel. The kids don't deserve this." I wrote mistake on the pad, underlining it. "A mix-up," I repeated. "Like putting Martha's name on the reservation instead of mine. Like booking a party of 6 weeks ago when you took my $20,000 silence, except for Fern's voice in the distance. Simon, tell him about the credit cards." I made a note. "Credit cards? What's that about credit cards?" I asked, leaning forward. Simon's voice hardened. "We can't afford another hotel, Dad. Everything's booked solid because of some convention. We put the trip on credit expecting different circumstances. Different circumstances? I said, my pen moving across the pad. You mean expecting to use my money while I sat home like a discarded piece of furniture? Stop being dramatic, he snapped. This isn't about you anymore. It's about Pearl, the kids. It became about me the moment you took my money and left me at the airport. I interrupted, my voice steady but sharp. Tell me, Simon, where did you expect me to spend my vacation alone in Oakland while you enjoyed the suites I paid for? Another pause, longer this time. You're punishing innocent kids because you got your feelings hurt, he said, his tone shifting to accusation. When I get back to California, you'll regret this, I wrote. You'll regret this, verbatim. My hand steady despite the hum in my head growing louder. Are you threatening me, son? I'm promising you actions have consequences, old man. He spat the words dripping with venom. I noted, old man, the hum sinking with my pulse. You're right about consequences, I said. Like the consequence of betraying someone's trust. Or stealing $20,000. We didn't steal anything, he shouted. You gave us that money for a family vacation, which by definition includes family, I said, my voice like steel. Yet you excluded me. Deliberately. Fern's voice grew louder in the background. Simon, tell him to call the hotel. Pearl's voice joined in, confused. What's going on? Why is everyone yelling? Simon tried a new tack, his tone softening. Dad, maybe we handled things badly, but right now we need to focus on fixing this. Can you call the hotel and— No, I said, the word cutting through his plea like a blade. What do you mean, no? His voice rose again, panic seeping through. I mean no, Simon. The same no you should have heard when you told me to go home and miss my grandchildren's vacation. This is insane, he said. You're acting like some vindictive. I hung up the silence in the study, deafening. The lamp flickered, casting a shadow that seemed to ripple, and the hum in my head surged, almost painful now. I stood crossing to the window where the roses glowed with an unnatural intensity, their petals pulsing like a heartbeat. Martha's silhouette flickered among them, her hand raised, pointing toward the filing cabinet. I blinked and she was gone, but the air vibrated with purpose. I returned to the desk, my notes now a map of Simon's desperation, threats, excuses, financial admissions. Zero accountability. The phone buzzed again, Simon's number flashing, but I turned it off. The hum softened and the lamp steadied, as if the house approved of my resolve. I gathered the documents for Bruce bank statements, the hotel confirmation, the Pacific Ventures memo, and tucked them into a leather portfolio. The memo troubled me most, its confidential stamp, a bridge to a past I'd locked away. Pacific Ventures wasn't just a shell company, it was a ghost from my classified days tied to experiments that had left me with questions I'd never answered. The drive to San Francisco was a ritual, the Bay Bridge stretching before me like a path to justice. Bruce's office on the 15th floor was a fortress of polished marble and mahogany, its air thick with the weight of serious decisions. He greeted me with a firm handshake, his eyes sharp with understanding. Lee, you look like a man on a mission, he said, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. I said, spreading the documents before him. Simon's shown his true colors. I need to protect what's mine. Bruce studied the papers, his pen moving across a legal pad as I recounted the phone call, Simon's threats, Fern's manipulation, the credit card admission. I mentioned the Pacific Ventures transfer, handing him the memo. His brow furrowed as he read it, his fingers pausing on the confidential stamp. This is unusual, he said. Pacific Ventures was linked to government contracts in the 80s, wasn't it? Your work? I nodded, the hum in my head pulsing faintly. Classified tech projects. Frequencies, energy fields, things we didn't fully understand. I thought it was behind me. It might not be, Bruce said, his voice low. This transfer suggests Simon's involved in something bigger. I'll have my team dig into it. For now, let's focus on your estate. He opened his laptop, pulling up estate planning templates. We can revise your will to exclude Simon entirely. California law protects your right to choose your beneficiaries, especially with evidence of financial coercion. These documents, he tapped the bank statements, show a pattern of exploitation. Combined with Simon's threats, it's airtight. I want him out, I said, my voice steady. Everything goes to causes that matter. Oakland Children's Education Foundation, UC Berkeley's engineering program, Veterans Services. No more funding, Simon's greed. Bruce nodded, his fingers flying over the keyboard. We'll draft a will naming those organizations as primary beneficiaries with specific language about Simon's exclusion due to exploitation and threats. We'll need witnesses, a notary, and a video to prove your competency. It'll be ready for signing by Monday. How ironclad is it? I asked, leaning forward. Bulletproof, he said. The video and documentation will crush any challenge. Simon would be a fool to try. I thought of Mia and Ethan, their innocent faces, but also Simon's venom. You'll regret this, old man. He's already a fool, I said. He changed the rules. I'm just making it official. Bruce studied me, his gaze assessing. This is permanent, Lee. It'll reshape your family. They reshaped it first, I replied, the hum in my head pulsing in agreement. I'm protecting what's left. We spent the next hour refining details. The Oakland Children's Education Foundation would receive $400,000 for scholarships. UC Berkeley's engineering program would get $300,000 for students like I'd been hungry for knowledge, not handouts. Senior Services Veterans Program's community development causes that valued stewardship. Bruce's notes grew into a blueprint for justice, each line a barrier against Simon's greed. As we wrapped up, he handed me a business card. My investigator, Clara Voss. She'll look into Pacific Ventures. If there's a connection to your past, she'll find it. I tucked the card into my pocket next to the memo. Thank you, Bruce. This means more than you know. He shook my hand, his grip conveying solidarity. You're doing the right thing, Lee. Justice, not revenge. The elevator ride down felt like a descent into a new reality. The hum in my head was quieter now, but the roses loomed in my mind, their glow a beacon of Martha's strength. As I drove home, the Bay Bridge stretched before me, its cables slicing the sky like a promise. The city lights reflected off the water, a view Martha had loved, and I felt her presence beside me, urging me forward. Back in my study, I opened the portfolio, the documents a testament to my resolve. The lamp flickered again, and the hum returned sharper, as if responding to the memo on my desk. I picked it up, the confidential stamp stark under the light. Pacific Ventures wasn't just a financial thread. It was a key to something larger, something tied to the experiments that had haunted me. The hum pulsed, and the roses outside glowed brighter, their petals almost translucent. I crossed to the window, my heart pounding, and there she was, Martha's silhouette standing among the roses, her eyes fierce with approval. She raised a hand, pointing toward the filing cabinet, and the hum surged, a signal I couldn't ignore. I opened the cabinet, my fingers finding another sealed envelope. This one marked Project Echo. The paper was brittle. The ink faded, but the words sent a chill through me. Pacific Ventures Funding Allocation Frequency. Modulation Trials, 1987. My name was listed as lead engineer alongside notes about anomalous signals and unexplained energy spikes. The hum in my head roared, and the lamp dimmed, casting the room in shadow. I blinked, and Martha's silhouette was gone. But the envelope felt alive in my hands, a piece of a puzzle I hadn't solved. I tucked it into the portfolio, my resolve hardening. Simon's betrayal was personal, but Pacific Ventures suggested something deeper, a shadow from my past that had found its way into my present. Monday's signing would secure my legacy, but this memo, this mystery, was a battle for another day. For now I was Lee Willis, engineer, widower, survivor, and I was ready to fight. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear, the Oakland hills bathed in sunlight. I dressed in a suit, the watch on my wrist ticking steadily, and drove to Bruce's office. The conference room was prepared, its polished table lined with documents like surgical instruments. Bruce's secretary, Mrs. Chan, and a paralegal, David, sat ready as witnesses, their notary stamps gleaming. A video camera stood on a tripod, its lens a silent judge. "This is a formal will execution," Bruce explained, his voice carrying the gravity of ceremony. "Everything must be witnessed and notarized to prevent challenges. The new will lay before me 23 pages of legal language, translating my anger into justice." Bruce read the key provisions aloud. "The testator, Lee Willis, being of sound mind, hereby excludes his son, Simon Willis, from all inheritance due to demonstrated financial exploitation and threatening behavior." The words were a blade clean and final. I signed each page, my hand steady, as Mrs. Chen and David watched. The camera recorded every moment, ensuring no court could question my intent. The notary seal pressed into the paper with a satisfying thud, making it official under California law. Bruce handed me sealed copies. "The original stays in our vault. Keep one accessible, another in a safety deposit box. Simon will find out when you're ready." I nodded, the portfolio under my arm like armor. "They land Thursday. I'll be at the airport." Bruce's eyes met mine, a flicker of respect in them. "You're a stronger man than most, Lee. This is justice done right." As I left the office, the hum in my head was silent, replaced by a quiet certainty. The roses would be waiting at home, glowing with Martha's approval. Simon thought he'd won, but he'd underestimated the man I'd always been. The battle wasn't over, but I'd drawn the line, and I was ready for what came next. The Oakland Hills glowed under the late afternoon sun as I drove toward San Francisco International Airport. The Bay Bridge stretching before me like a steel spine, connecting my past to this moment. The leather portfolio on the passenger seat held my new will, sealed with the weight of justice. $400,000 to the Oakland Children's Education Foundation. $300,000 to UC Berkeley's engineering program, and the rest to causes that valued stewardship over greed. Simon was out his betrayal. 20,000 stolen, my place in the family, erased, etched into every clause. The hum in my head, that strange pulse from my classified days, was quiet now, replaced by a calm certainty. Martha's roses had glowed brighter this morning, their petals almost translucent, as if she were watching, approving. Her voice echoed in my mind, "Don't let them confuse kindness with weakness, Lee." The Project Echo memo tucked into the portfolio was a shadow I couldn't shake. Found in a sealed envelope marked "Confidential," it linked Pacific Ventures, the mysterious recipient of Simon's $5,000 transfer to experiments I'd led in 1987. Involving frequencies that had caused anomalies we couldn't explain. The hum, the flickering lamp, Martha's silhouette among the roses, they all pointed to something larger, a mystery tying my past to Simon's betrayal. But today wasn't about unraveling that thread. Today was about justice, about showing Simon the man he'd underestimated. I parked in SFO's short-term lot, the portfolio under my arm, and walked toward Terminal 2. The air buzzed with the same chaos I'd felt 4 days ago, children clutching stuffed animals, couples arguing over luggage, the hum of rolling suitcases like a distant drumbeat. But I wasn't the same man who'd stood here shocked by Simon's forgotten ticket. That Lee Willis had been a trusting father blinded by love. This Lee Willis was a survivor forged in betrayal, ready to draw a line. Bruce Harland waited near the arrival's gate, his navy suit a stark contrast to the colorful crowd. At 55, he carried the quiet authority of a man who'd seen families unravel and helped them rebuild. "Lee," he said, shaking my hand. "You ready for this?" I adjusted the portfolio, feeling the watch on my wrist. Martha's gift ticking steadily. "They changed the rules, Bruce. I'm just playing by the new ones." He nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "The will's airtight, witnessed, notarized, recorded. Clara Voss is digging into Pacific Ventures, but it'll take time. For now, this," he tapped the portfolio, "is your weapon." I glanced at the arrivals board. Hawaiian Airlines Flight 448 from Honolulu arrived. Simon, Fern, Mia, Ethan, Pearl, and Saul would be here any moment expecting a warm welcome after a vacation that had collapsed under the weight of my cancellation. 56 missed calls, dozens of texts, Simon's threats. "You'll regret this," old man had only hardened my resolve. The hum in my head stirred faintly, as if sensing the confrontation ahead. The gate doors slid open and passengers spilled out their faces, a mix of exhaustion and relief. I spotted Mia first, her pigtails bouncing as she clutched a stuffed turtle, her eyes red from crying. Ethan followed, dragging a backpack, his usual energy dimmed. Fern's sharp gaze scanned the crowd, her posture rigid while Pearl and Saul trailed behind, Pearl's sun hat askew, Saul's face etched with fatigue. Simon was last, his tall frame hunched, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low but urgent. "I don't care what it takes, find us a place to stay tonight." I stepped forward, Bruce at my side, the portfolio a shield. "Simon!" I called, my voice cutting through the terminal's noise. He froze his phone, lowering slowly, his eyes meeting mine. For a moment I saw the boy I'd raised, curious, bright, the son who'd built model bridges with me in the garage. Then his jaw tightened and the man who'd betrayed me took over. "Dad," he said, his voice flat, "you've got some explaining to do." Fern stepped forward, her smile practiced but brittle. "Dad Willis, we've had the worst trip. The kids are traumatized. Whatever you did to the hotel, enough." I said the word sharp enough to silence her. Mia and Ethan looked up, their faces uncertain, and my heart ached for them. But this wasn't about them, it was about their parents who'd used my love as a weapon. Pearl's voice broke the tension, confused. "Lee, what's going on? Why are you acting like this?" Saul placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes meeting mine with a flicker of understanding. "Let him speak, Pearl." I opened the portfolio, pulling out a sealed envelope containing a copy of the new will. "Simon Fern, this is for you." I handed it to Simon, my hand steady despite the hum pulsing faintly in my head. He stared at the envelope, his fingers hesitating. "What's this? Open it," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. Fern's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing as Simon tore open the envelope. His face paled as he scanned the first page, the words, "Last Will and Testament of Lee Willis," stark in black ink. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice rising. "You're cutting me out." Bruce stepped forward, his presence a quiet command. "Mr. Willis, I'm Bruce Harland, Lee's attorney. That document is a legally executed will, witnessed and notarized. It excludes you from inheritance due to documented financial exploitation and threatening behavior." Simon's hands shook the paper, crumpling slightly. "Exploitation threats." "This is insane, Dad. You can't do this. I didn't do this," I said, my eyes locked on his. "You did. When you took my $20,000 non-dollars, booked a vacation for 4 and left me at this very gate with a lie about a forgotten ticket. When you used Martha's name to erase me. When you threatened me over the phone." Fern's face flushed, her voice sharp. "This is about the hotel cancellation, isn't it? You're punishing us for a mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," I said, my voice steady. "You planned it 6 weeks ago. You used my money, my trust, and thought I'd just take it. You were wrong." Mia tugged at Fern's sleeve, her voice small. "Grandpa, are you mad at us?" The hum in my head softened and I knelt to her level, my heart aching. "No, sweetheart. I love you and Ethan more than anything. This is about grown-up choices, not you." I stood, my gaze returning to Simon. "But choices have consequences." Simon's eyes darted to the will, then to Bruce. "You think this will hold up in court? I'll fight it. You can't just cut me out." Bruce's voice was calm but firm. "You're welcome to try, Mr. Willis. The will is supported by bank statements showing $47,000 in transfers to you last year alone, a hotel reservation excluding your father, and recorded threats from your call on May 16th. We have a competency video, witnesses, and notarization. It's ironclad." Fern grabbed the will from Simon, scanning it frantically. This says everything goes to charities Oakland Children's UC Berkeley. What about the kids? You're taking their future. Their future is secure, I said, my voice unwavering. The Oakland Children's Education Foundation will fund scholarships for kids like them. UC Berkeley's engineering program will support dreamers who work for it, not demand it. I'm giving them a legacy, not a handout. Pearl stepped forward, her sun hat trembling. Lee, we didn't know. Simon said you didn't want to come, that you were too tired for the trip. I turned to her, my voice softening but firm. Pearl, you sat at my table 3 months ago planning this trip with me. You saw the brochures, the itinerary. You knew I paid for it. Did you really believe I'd choose to stay home? Her eyes dropped and Saul's hand tightened on her shoulder. We should have asked questions, he said quietly. I'm sorry, Lee. Simon's face twisted, his voice a low growl. This is revenge, Dad. You're punishing us because you felt left out. I stepped closer, my eyes locked on his. This isn't revenge, Simon. It's justice. You changed the rules when you betrayed me. I'm just making it official. The terminal buzzed around us, passengers staring their curiosity, a distant hum, compared to the one in my head now pulsing faintly. The air felt charged, like the moment before a circuit completes. I glanced at Mia and Ethan. Their faces uncertain, and my resolve wavered for a moment. Then I remembered Simon's relief at this gate. His text, "Take care of yourself," and the $5,000 to Pacific Ventures, a shadow I still couldn't grasp. Fern's voice broke the silence, shrill and desperate. We'll sue Lee. You can't do this to your family. Bruce handed her his card, his tone professional. Contact my office if you wish to pursue legal action. But I advise you to read the will carefully. It's designed to withstand challenges. Simon crumpled the envelope, his eyes blazing. You're a selfish old man, Dad. You'll regret this. The hum in my head surged, and for a moment the terminal seemed to dim, the lights flickering like the lamp in my study. I saw Martha's silhouette in the crowd, her eyes fierce, her hand raised as if pointing me forward. I blinked and she was gone, but the hum steadied my resolve. You're right about regrets, Simon, I said. I regret trusting you, but that ends today. I knelt again, hugging Mia and Ethan tightly, their small arms warm against me. I'll always love you, I whispered. This isn't about you. I stood, turning to Bruce. Let's go. We walked toward the exit, the portfolio under my arm, the hum in my head quieting. Behind me, Simon shouted something, but the terminal's noise swallowed it. Pearl's voice followed, pleading, but I kept walking. The automatic doors slid open, and the evening air hit me like a cleansing wave. The Bay Bridge loomed ahead, its cables a promise of the life I was rebuilding. In the car, Bruce glanced at me. You handled that well, Lee, stronger than most would have. They underestimated me, I said, my hands steady on the wheel. They won't again. He nodded, flipping through the portfolio. Clara's digging into Pacific Ventures. That memo project Echo, it's tied to some heavy players from the 80s. Government contracts, experimental tech. If Simon's involved, it's not just about money. The hum stirred faintly, a reminder of the mystery still unsolved. Keep me posted, I said. For now, the will's enough. As I drove across the Bay Bridge, the city lights reflected off the water, a view Martha had loved. Her presence was with me not just in memory, but in the roses, the hum, the silhouette that had guided me. Simon's betrayal had awakened something in me, a strength I'd buried under years of generosity. The airport confrontation wasn't the end, but a beginning. I was Lee Willis, engineer, widower, survivor, and I was ready for whatever came next. The Oakland hills were cloaked in twilight as I pulled into my driveway, the familiar cedar and paper scent of my home greeting me like an old friend. The confrontation at San Francisco International Airport was still fresh. Simon's crumpled will in his shaking hands, Fern's shrill accusations, the quiet weight of Mia and Ethan's confused gazes. I'd walked away from the terminal with Bruce Harland at my side, the portfolio containing my new will, a shield forged in justice. $400,000 to the Oakland Children's Education Foundation, $300,000 to UC Berkeley's engineering program, and the rest to causes that honored stewardship over greed. Simon was out his betrayal. 20,000 stolen, my place in the family erased, etched into every notarized page. The hum in my head, that strange pulse from my classified days, was silent, now replaced by a stillness I hadn't felt in years. Martha's roses glowed faintly in the garden, their petals catching the last light of day, as if whispering her approval. You didn't let them confuse kindness with weakness, Lee. I set the portfolio on the kitchen counter and poured a cup of chamomile tea, Martha's favorite, its steam curling like a sigh. The house felt different tonight, calm, not charged, as if it had been holding its breath through my battle and could finally exhale. The Project Echo memo tucked into the portfolio lingered in my thoughts, a shadow from my past I hadn't fully unraveled. Its confidential stamp linked Pacific Ventures, the recipient of Simon's mysterious $5,000 transfer, to experiments I'd led in 1987 involving frequencies that had caused anomalies we couldn't explain. The hum, the flickering lamp, Martha's silhouette among the roses, they hinted at something larger, a mystery that pulsed beneath the surface of my victory. But tonight, I wasn't chasing shadows. Tonight was for peace, for reclaiming the man I'd always been. I carried the tea to the living room and sank into Martha's oak chair by the window, the one she'd loved for its view of the garden. The roses glowed brighter now, their luminescence almost otherworldly, as if they were more than plants' guardians perhaps, or echoes of Martha's spirit. I'd seen her silhouette there too many times to dismiss it as imagination, each citing a nudge toward the strength I'd rediscovered. The watch on my wrist, her gift, ticked steadily its rhythm, a reminder of the life we'd built, the love that still guided me. I sipped the tea, its warmth spreading through me, and let my mind wander to the journey that had brought me here. 4 days ago I'd stood in SFO's Terminal 2, a trusting father shattered by Simon's lie, I forgot to buy your ticket. The betrayal had cut deeper than I'd thought possible. $20,000 gone, my name replaced with Martha's, on a hotel reservation, a calculated plan to erase me from a family vacation I'd funded. I'd been the generous patriarch, the man who paid for Simon's mortgage, Mia's violin lessons, Ethan's soccer gear, Pearl's surgery, $47,000 last year alone. They'd mistaken my kindness for weakness, assuming I'd slink home defeated. But they didn't know the man I'd been before fatherhood, before engineering a man who'd solved problems that stumped governments, who'd faced betrayals in the shadows of classified projects, and emerged stronger. The confrontation at the airport had been my line in the sand. Handing Simon the will, watching his face pale as he read his exclusion, had been justice, not revenge. Bruce's words echoed bulletproof. The will was airtight, supported by bank statements, recorded threats, and a competency video no court could challenge. Simon's desperation. You'll regret this. Old man had only solidified my resolve. Mia and Ethan's innocent faces had tugged at my heart, but I'd protected their future by redirecting my legacy to causes that would lift others, not enable greed. The Oakland Children's Education Foundation would fund scholarships for kids like them. UC Berkeley's engineering program would nurture dreamers like I'd been. My wealth would build, not destroy. I set the tea down and crossed to the study where the Hawaii 2025 folder still lay, a relic of betrayal, now dwarfed by my victory. The Project Echo memo sat beside it, its faded ink a bridge to a past I'd buried. Pacific Ventures wasn't just a shell company, it was a ghost from 1987, tied to experiments that had left me with questions I'd never answered. The hum in my head, the flickering lamp, Martha's silhouette. They were connected, I was sure, but the puzzle felt distant now, a challenge for another day. Clara Voss, Bruce's investigator, was digging into Pacific Ventures, and I trusted her to find answers. For now I'd won the battle that mattered. I opened the window, letting the cool evening air sweep through the study. The roses swayed, their glow softening as if sensing my peace. I thought of Simon's cryptic post from 6 weeks ago. Big plans in motion. Sometimes you have to cut dead weight to move forward. I'd been the dead weight, but in cutting me out, he'd awakened the man I'd forgotten. The hum stirred faintly, a gentle pulse, and I smiled. It wasn't just a relic of my past, it was a reminder of my strength, a signal that I was still here, still fighting. I returned to the living room, settling into Martha's chair with a book she'd loved, a collection of Rilke's poems. Her handwriting marked the margins, her notes a conversation across time. One line stood out, underlined in her careful script. Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once, with beauty and courage. I traced the words, my fingers lingering on her ink. Simon's betrayal had been my dragon, but I'd faced it with courage, not vengeance. The will wasn't a punishment, it was a reclamation, a testament to the man I'd always been. The phone sat silent on the coffee table. No new calls from Simon or Fern. I'd turned it off after the airport, needing space to breathe, to savor this moment. The silence was a gift, a canvas for reflection. I thought of Mia and Ethan, their small arms around me at the airport, and my heart ached. I'd find a way to stay in their lives, letters, visits, gifts sent through Saul, who'd shown a flicker of regret. But Simon and Fern had made their choice, and I'd made mine. The roses glowed faintly outside, and I felt Martha's presence, not as a silhouette now, but as a warmth in my chest, a steady hand guiding me forward. I stood and crossed to the kitchen where a simple dinner waited: roasted vegetables, a slice of sourdough, a glass of wine. I ate slowly, savoring the flavors, the act grounding me in the present. The house was quiet, but not empty. It was filled with Martha's memory, my resolve, the legacy I'd secured. The hum in my head was gone, replaced by a peace that felt like coming home. I washed the dishes, the routine a meditation, and returned to the living room where the roses caught my eye again. I stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin. The roses were radiant, their petals shimmering as if lit from within. I knelt beside them, my fingers brushing their leaves, and for a moment I swore I felt a pulse, like the hum that had guided me. "Thank you, Martha," I whispered, my voice soft but steady, "for reminding me who I am." The garden was still, but the air felt alive, as if the roses were listening. I stood, my gaze lingering on the petals, and returned inside. The portfolio on the counter was a closed chapter, but the Project Echo memo was an open one. I'd face it when Clara's report came, when the pieces of Pacific Ventures fell into place. For now I'd won, not just against Simon, but against the part of me that had doubted my worth. I sat in Martha's chair, the Rilke book open in my lap, and read until the words blurred, not from tears, but from a quiet joy. The clock ticked past midnight, its chimes a gentle farewell to the day. I thought of the scholarships my money would fund, the students who'd build bridges and circuits, the communities that would thrive. My legacy was no longer a family that had discarded me. It was a world I'd help shape. As I closed the book, a faint hum stirred, not in my head, but in the air, soft as a whisper. The lamp flickered, casting a warm glow across the room, and I smiled. Martha was here, in the roses, in the hum, in the strength I'd reclaimed. Simon's betrayal had been a storm, but I'd weathered it, emerging not as a victim, but as a man who knew his worth. The dragons were gone, and in their place was peace, a peace I'd earned, a peace that felt like home. I stood, turning off the lamp, and headed to bed. The roses glowed faintly through the window, a final nod from Martha. Tomorrow I'd call Saul, arrange to see the kids start rebuilding what could be saved. I'd wait for Clara's report, unravel the mystery of Pacific Ventures, face whatever shadows lingered from my past. But tonight I slept, the watch on my wrist ticking softly, a reminder that time was mine again.